You know, it's funny. I used to say that, hey, if you as a gay person would go to Gaza, they'd throw you off of tall buildings, right? Now they don't have any tall buildings left, so I don't... Is that too soon? I'm sorry. Maybe you shouldn't kill Jews, stupid Muslims.
I want to return to Charlie Kirk for a second, because there are a lot of people out there who just keep saying, like, Charlie Kirk is a great dude, he had great takes or whatever. Here, let's take a look at one of those takes. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I keep hearing from dumb on my TikTok For You page about how, oh, you think Charlie Kirk's opinion on the gays was bad? Well, why don't you ask a Palestinian? And it's like, dude.
The bull, you get the horns.
Is that too soon? I'm sorry. Maybe you shouldn't kill Jews, stupid Muslims.
Dude, that's so funny. Dude, that's hilarious, bro. That's crazy. People found your OG debate with Charlie Kirk? Yeah, I saw a couple of those.
Do you not want them to protest? Like, why are you trying to always take away their right to protest? It's so hypocritical.
Because as soon you can peacefully protest.
It's so hypocritical.
How is that hypocritical?
Colin Kaepernick peacefully protested, took a knee. How is he doing that? You can't do that. Then if they protest on the streets, it's not acceptable. If they protest peacefully, it's not acceptable. It seems like you just don't want them to protest, because I didn't hear you yelling at Tea Party people when they were burning Obama. Have a right to protest? 100%. Or do you think people should only protest when it's things that you're in favor of?
No, I'm okay with this protesting. Here's the difference.
It doesn't seem like it.
So when you start interrupting a speaker and pulling the fire alarm and throwing objects, isn't that something wrong with that? That's entirely...
It's funny, but yeah, there is something wrong with that.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. You're making a straw man argument about something. I believe that everyone has a right to protest peacefully however they see fit. You're creating this...
As long as they're not Colin Kaepernick.
No, you could say whatever.
As long as they're not the 30 students at Notre Dame who protested Michael.
That's why it kind of pisses me off when people are like, oh, Charlie Kirk would cook you. Bitch, I've already debated his ass twice. The jank moment is also, I live like a capitalist every day, jank.
Larger than that, Charlie.
I live like a capitalist every single day, jank. I live as a capitalist, okay? I live.
Like, that's from my second debate with him. Let's look at the comments. This is why he never debated at all. He was tired of losing every damn debate. The reason why he only liked to debate college students. Kirk lost all his debates. Charlie is literally saying he's good with protesting the whole video. Dude wasn't even letting Kirk talk, fill in the space with words because he only knew how to say two things. He never answers the questions. He just changed the subject mid-conversation. Was really curious to see how the rest of the clip went. This really showed nothing, honestly. Kirk wiped the floor with Hassan in this debate. When the crowd isn't biased towards Kirk, it doesn't sound like he's winning. By the way, back then, he was infinitely more moderate, just so you understand. He was still incredibly right-wing, but in comparison to who he became, in comparison to what his advocacy looked like by the end of his career, I promise you, he was the type of guy who would be like, I don't like Black Lives Matter. He told me in private correspondence, one of the last conversations that we had in private, because I look back at it, was when he told me that while he was not pro-BLM, the comparison between Black Lives Matter and KKK was completely inappropriate. That's what he was pushing for back then. He straight up was saying, like, people that actually compare the KKK to Black Lives Matter are f***ed up because the KKK is an evil institution. Do you understand? Think about how much his opinion, or at least his output, changed. His output shifted. Yeah, he used to be a Milton Friedman ANCAP truther. That's all he did. How likely was it that he was grifting? Of course he was grifting, man. That's it. I don't think you guys understand. Of course he was grifting. What are you talking about? He is a regime propagandist. He was a regime propagandist. Do you understand? Y'all hated Charlie Kirk so much. Congrats. Now look at who you've awakened. I think these people are such hot dog fingered losers, bro. Oh my God. These people are basically potato. Like, oh no, what will we do? We have awakened the pedophile Nazi Milo Yiannopoulos. Oh no. They're just so stupid. Like, what do you mean? Oh God, I can't believe it. Another pedophile neo-Nazi? What are we gonna do? Why did he retire? Do you recall? He was forced to retire. Not because he was a neo-Nazi, but because he was a pedophile. It's so dumb. It's okay, he's Christian now. No, I know. Oh, also, the other one is Sam Hyde. That's the other thing that they keep talking about. They're like, oh, you made Sam Hyde cry. Which, by the way, that's my favorite. Motherfuckers who are like, I can't believe these guys want to do political violence. The left is so violent. okay, mother. Sam Hyde is literally, again, another pedophile neo-Nazi. And his claim to fame for the last, 3 years is literally talking about how he's going to murder me, which is, not going to happen most likely, okay? Let's be real. You'd have to go up a couple stairs and most likely pass away in the process. But, I don't understand why these people, volunteer this information. You know what I mean? Why the do they volunteer this information where they're just like, this is the guy, this is our champion, this is our champion, another pedophile neo-Nazi. Charlie Kirk redeemed. A political class finds his lost cause by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Before he was killed last week, Charlie Kirk left a helpful compendium of words, ones that would greatly aid those who sought to understand his legacy and import. It is somewhat difficult to match these words with the manner in which Kirk is presently being memorialized in mainstream discourse. New York Times columnist Ezra Klein dubbed Kirk one of the era's most effective practitioners of persuasion and a man who was practicing politics in exactly the right way. California Governor Gavin Newsom hailed Kirk's passion and commitment to debate, advising us to continue Kirk's work by engaging with each other across ideology through spirited discourse. Atlantic writer Sally Jenkins saluted Kirk, claiming he argued with civility and asserting his death was a significant loss for those who believed engagement can help bridge disagreements. Why the do these people think SJW-owned compilations are actually a medium to legitimately arrive at the truth through spirited discourse among interlocutors? That is not the case. How are you so easily duped? Or do you have worms for brains? What the God, I hate aesthetics perverts. The civility fetishists are unbearable, dude. Liberals are so stupid sometimes. The mentions of debate and engagement are references to Kirk's campus tours, during which he visited various colleges to take on whoever come may. That this aspect of Kirk's work would be so attractive to the writers and politicians is understandable. There's, after all, a pervasive worry among the political class that college students, ensconced in their own bubbles, could use a bit of shock therapy from a man unconcerned with preferred pronouns, trigger warnings, and the humanity of Palestinians. Ta-Nehisi Coates is a great writer, but it also shows how the political class's obsession with universities binds it to everything else. Oh my God, what a great take. I know. That's why campus frenzy goes so nutty mode in mainstream discourse, because all of these went to the same Ivy League institutions. So that's all they worry about. Unbearable. How much of the first 6 to 10 months of Israel's genocide was spent on talking about college campus activism? Oh my Lord. But it also shows that the political class's obsession with the universities blinds it to everything else, and the everything else of Kirk's politics amounted to little more than a loathing of those whose mere existence provoked this ire. It is not just, for instance, that Kirk held disagreeable views, that he was pro-life, that he believed in public executions, or that he rejected the separation of church and state. It's that Kirk reveled in open bigotry. Indeed, claims that Kirk's civility are tough to square with his penchant for demeaning members of the LGBTQ community as freaks and referring to trans people with the slur, the T word. Faced with the prospect of Kamala Harris' presidency, Kirk told his audience that the threat had to be averted because Harris wanted to kidnap your child via the trans agenda. Garden variety transphobia is sadly unremarkable, but Kirk was a master of folding seemingly discordant bigotries into each other as he defined the American way of life as marriage, home ownership, and child rearing free of the lesbian, gay, transgender garbage in their school, adding that he did not want kids to have to hear the Muslim call to prayer 5 times a day. He also once famously said if Kamala Harris wins, then they're going to import Haitians into the country and export white people, something along those lines. I'm actually paraphrasing. Don't kill me, okay? Something along those lines. I can't recall the exact quote off the top of my mind. I know that's illegal now. God forbid you say Charlie Kirk actually said something entirely different, and then the actual quote itself is not entirely different at all. He just got 3 words wrong, max, and they didn't actually change what he was saying. The American way of life was Christendom, Kirk claimed. In Islam, the sword the left is using to slit the throat of America was antithetical to that. Large dedicated Islamic areas were a threat to America, Kirk asserted, and New York mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani was a Mohammedan. I love that one. That one's actually awesome. Mohammedan! Dusting off the tomes of racism. All right. With Kirk supposing that anyone trying to see Mohammedism take over the West would love to have New York, a prior Anglo center, under Mohammedan rule. Kirk habitually railed against black crime. claiming that prowling blacks go around for fun to go target white people. He repeated the rape accusations against Yusuf Salam, a member of the exonerated Central Park Five, who is now a New York City councilman, calling him a disgusting pig who had gotten away with gang rape. Whatever distaste Kirk held for blacks was multiplied when he turned to those from Haiti. Haiti was, by Kirk's lights, a country infested with demonic voodoo whose migrants were raping your women and hunting you down at night. These Haitians, as well as undocumented immigrants from other countries, were having a field day, per Kirk, and coming for your daughter next. Yeah, I was wrong. He actually didn't say Haitians were going to replace the white population. He said they were going to come to the country and rape your daughters, your white daughters.
The Haitians that are in Huntsville that are raping your women and hunting you down at night, it's only going to get worse unless Donald Trump wins. A new report from Fox News shows that across the border, 13,000 people convicted of murder, 15,000 people convicted of rape on the non-detained list, meaning they're currently roaming free around our country. So right now, roaming free on the interior of the United States are 13,000 convicted murderers, 15,000 convicted rapists, and they're having a field day. And they're coming for your daughter next. Let's play cut 183.
Yet another instance where my paraphrasing of Charlie Kirk's actual opinion on a particular issue was actually much kinder than his true opinion on that issue. These Haitians, as well as undocumented immigrants from other countries, were having a field day, per Kirk, coming for your daughter next. The only hope was Donald Trump, who had to prevail lest Haitians become your masters. The point of this so-called mastery was as familiar as it was conspiratorial, the Great Replacement. There was an anti-white agenda, Kirk howled, one that sought to make the country more like the third world. The southern border was a dumping ground of the planet, he claimed, and a magnet for the rapists, the thugs, the murderers, the fighting age males. They're coming from across the world, from China, from Russia, from Middle Eastern countries, he said. And they're coming in, and they're coming in, and they're coming in, and they're coming in. You can probably imagine where this line of thinking eventually went. Jewish donors, Kirk claimed, were the number one funding mechanism of radical open border neoliberal quasi-Marxist policies, cultural institutions, and nonprofits. Indeed, the philosophical foundation of anti-whiteness has been largely financed by Jewish donors in the country. This is why it's also funny that Nick Fuentes hated him, because they believe the same things. The only difference is Nick Fuentes is anti-Israel, Charlie Kirk is pro-Israel. Kirk's bigotry was not personal, but extended to the institution he founded, Turning Point USA. Crystal Clanton, the group's former national field director, once texted a fellow Turning Point employee, "I hate black people, like them all. I hate blacks, end of story." One of the group's advisors, Rip McIntosh, once published a newsletter featuring an essay from a pseudonymous writer that said blacks had become socially incompatible with other races and that black culture was unfixable and a crime-ridden mess. In 2022, after 3 black football players were killed at another college, Meg Miller, president of Turning Point chapter at the University of Missouri, joked, in air quotes, in a social media message, if they would have killed 4 more N-words with a hard R, for those of you who are listening at home and not reading along, we would have had the whole week off. Kirk subscribed to some of the most disreputable and harmful beliefs that this country has ever known, but it is still chilling to think that those beliefs would be silenced by a gunshot. The tragedy is personal. Kirk was robbed of his life, and his children and family will forever live with the knowledge that a visual record of that robbery is just an internet search away. And the tragedy is national. Political violence ends conversation and invites war. Its rejection is paramount to a functioning democracy and a free society. Amazing words. I fully agree with everything he's saying. Political violence is a virus, Klein noted. This assertion is true. It is also at odds with Kirk's own words. It's not that Kirk merely, as Klein put it, defended the Second Amendment. It's that Kirk endorsed hurting people to advance his preferred policy outcomes. God damn, Ta-Nehisi Coates does not even let up for a brief moment in this entire article. Holy shit. Jesus Christ. In 2022, when Kirk was frustrated, for instance, by the presence of Leah Thomas on the University of Pennsylvania's women's swim team, Kirk did not call for spirited discourse. Instead, while discussing a recent championship tournament, he said he would have liked to have seen a group of fathers descend from the stands, forming a line in front of Leah Thomas and saying, "Hey, tough guy, you want to get in the pool? Because you're going to have to come through us." Mere weeks before his death, Kirk reveled in Trump's deployment of federal troops to D.C. Shock and awe. Force, he wrote. "We're taking our country back from these cockroaches," Charlie Kirk said about deploying the military on U.S. soil. And in 2023, Kirk told his audience that the then President Joe Biden was a corrupt tyrant who should be put in prison and or given the death penalty for his crimes against America. What are we to make of a man who called for the execution of the American president and then was executed himself? What are we to make of an NFL that once, on one hand, encourages us to end racism and on the other urges us to commemorate an unreconstructed white supremacist? And what of the writers, the thinkers, the pundits who cannot separate the great crime of Kirk's death from the malignancy of his public life? Can they truly be so ignorant to the words of a man they have so rushed to memorialize? I don't know. But the most telling detail in Klein's column was that, for all his praise, there was not a single word in the piece from Kirk himself. That is by design, by the way. Okay? That's the whole point. Because if Ezra Klein, who is the most esteemed liberal would utter a simple, one singular word from Charlie Kirk, it would give the game away that his progressive bona fides is just nothing. That's it. That's also part of the reason why none of the people that are highlighting Charlie Kirk are talking about the shit that he said. More than a century and a half ago, this country ignored the explicit words of men who sought to raise an empire of slavery. It subsequently transformed those men into gallant knights who sought only to preserve their beloved Camelot. There was a fatigue in certain quarters with Reconstruction, which is to say multiracial democracy, and a desire for a reunion to make America great again. Thus, in the late 19th century and much of the 20th, this country's most storied intellectuals transfigured hate mongers into heroes and ignored their words, just as, right now, some are ignoring Kirk's. Words are not violence, nor are they powerless. Burying the truth of the Confederacy, rewriting its aims and ideas, and ignoring its animating words allowed for the terrorization of the black population, the imposition of apartheid, and the destruction of democracy. The rewriting and ignoring were done not just by Confederates, but also by putative allies for whom the reduction of black people to serfdom was the unfortunate price of white unity. On fire. The paper is on fire. The import of this history has never been clearer than in this moment, when the hard question must be asked: if you would look away from the words of Charlie Kirk, from what else would you look away? God damn, dude. I said something that is nowhere near as poetic about the Ezra Klein piece, which was, and I'm fully in agreement with Ta-Nehisi here, which is that Ezra Klein, at worst, likes and subscribes to Charlie Kirk's worldview, or at best, does not think it's so bad that it needs its own analysis, or it needs to be mentioned even a little bit. And not to get like the friend who's too woke here, but I do think that there is a tinge of, if not white supremacy, a tinge of, I guess, privilege there, where you just don't think that this is a real issue at all. White apathy, maybe.
I'm sorry. If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
Well, that's the
you wouldn't have done that. You wouldn't have. You wouldn't have done that before.
That's not an immediate.
No, you wouldn't have done that before.
That's not who I am. That's not what I believe.
It is the reality the left has created.